Today we are going to consider from Acts chapter 23, verse 12 on. Actually, we're going to read verse 11 and on. In the beginning of chapter 23, we learned that Paul is in the custody of the Roman commander, and he had couple of opportunities. One, to share his testimony before a large group of Jewish and some Roman people, and that was at the temple. And this is the second time. Then the second time he was brought before the Sanhedrin, which is the Jewish high court, and there the chief priest was a guy named Ananias, and he had an opportunity to share the gospel, although the chief priest asked his servants to strike Paul. But Paul Paul declared before the high priest and the Sanhedrin that he's being charged for no crime. He has he has clear conscience, but the reason he's brought before them is that he believes in resurrection of the dead, and in the gospel, the summary of the gospel is that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and that's why he is the Messiah. That's why everyone who put their trust in Jesus Christ believe that they will be resurrected from death, not along with other people, but before other people, and they will spare the judgment before God. But the people who don't put their trust in Jesus Christ, they will be resurrected at one time afterwards when Christ returns to the earth at the end of times, and they will be judged for their life and their how they lived, and everyone will be found guilty, and if they are not washed by the blood of Jesus Christ. Paul again claimed that he was brought before the Sanhedrin because of his belief that everyone will be resurrected from the dead and resurrected from death. There were two groups at that time in Israel. One is the Pharisees and the other one is the Sanhedrins. Pharisees believed that people will be resurrected. There is afterlife after death, and the Sadducees didn't believe that. So there was a dissension and contention between these two groups, and the things got really ugly and chaotic. The commander of the Roman army asked the soldiers to go and fetch Paul from the middle of this chaos that was going on from the mob, and brought him inside the barracks. So now Paul is kept inside the barracks, and that night we read in verse 11, Jesus Christ appeared to him. So let's read verse 11 of chapter 23. The following night, the Lord stood by him and said, "Be of good cheer, Paul, for as you have testified for me in Jerusalem, so you must also bear witness at Rome." So Paul was in the barracks at night. He was obviously he was beaten and he was suffering. He didn't have the freedom. But the Lord came to him at night, and we read that he stood by him. The picture that we have is as a friend, he came and put his arm around him and to encourage him and strengthen him, and told him that I am with you. Jesus Christ, before he ascended to heaven, he told his disciples that I'll be with you even till the end of the ages. So here, Jesus Christ, when his soldiers are suffering, that Jesus Christ literally appearing to them, and the vision of the Jesus Christ standing next to him is one thing that would strengthen anyone who is going through persecution and even death. One example in the early chapters of Acts, we know when Stephen was stoned, he, at the last moment of his life, he looked up and he said, "I see the heaven opens up and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of the Father." And he saw the glorified Christ standing in heaven, trying to receive his soldier into his arms. And that vision was the last thing that Stephen saw. And what a marvelous thing it is for the believers as they go through troubles and trials and persecutions and on this earth. They can be assured that the Lord is standing by them. And this night also, Paul, as he was in the barracks after being thrown around and persecuted, brought into the barracks, and he's there. And I'm sure he's not in the best of conditions, and he probably was fear as a human being. He must be fearful of his life. But the Lord came and stood by him to strengthen him. That what he told him is, be of good cheer. Be of good cheer. We read that in the New Testament that multiple times Jesus Christ told people who are going through suffering and problems and fear that be of good cheer. One example is in Matthew chapter 14, when the disciples were trying to cross over to the other side of the sea, and they were in the sea in the middle of the night, and there was a big storm around them, and they couldn't move anywhere. They were stuck in the middle of the storm, and they were probably the sailboat was going around rather than moving forward, and there was a big storm around them, and they were afraid, and they were scared for their life. And all of a sudden they saw a man coming to them, and they saw that figure coming to him. They immediately thought, oh, that must be a ghost. But then they found out it is Jesus Christ. And then we know the story where Peter jumped into the water, started walking, and he started drowning when he looked around and saw all the storm. And all of a sudden, Jesus Christ reached out and pulled him out of the water and brought him into the boat. And when Jesus Christ entered into the boat, he said, "Be of good cheer. Be of good cheer." They were one moment they were afraid for their life. Even more afraid when they didn't recognize Jesus Christ appearing to them. But when Jesus Christ entered into the boat, when he came near them, he calmed the storm and also calmed his disciples who were scared for their life, that be of good cheer. And also in John chapter 16, after Jesus Christ gave that great sermon to them and told them what will happen to him and all those details, and it was not very comforting. But Jesus Christ told that be of good cheer. In this world you will have persecution, but if you are with me, you will have peace, and be of good cheer. And that is the word that Lord whispers to each and every one of us while we are going through this life in this wilderness journey, that be of good cheer. I am with you. I'm standing by you. There are times when nobody else will be standing by us, but the Lord will stand by us. And now the Lord told him that he is going to, just as he witnessed Jesus Christ in Jerusalem, Paul is going to go to Rome and testify him before the Roman authorities. And in verse 12 we read, "And when it was day, some of the Jews banded together and bound themselves under an oath, saying that they would neither drink nor eat until they had killed Paul. Now there were more than 40 who had formed this conspiracy. And they came to the chief priests and elders and said, 'We have bound ourselves under a great oath that we will not eat until we have killed Paul. Now you therefore, together with the council, suggest to the commander that he be brought down to you tomorrow, as though you were going to make further inquiries concerning him, but we are ready to kill him before he comes near.'" A great conspiracy of 40 men, 40 people who took an oath that they are going to kill him. And this is through this plan that they devised, is that they will have the chief priest and the council, the Sanhedrin, will go to the commander and say that we need to hear more. We bring Paul back to us. And as they bring him back to the Sanhedrin, along the way, these 40 men, and usually there were spearsmen, people who carried spear to kill people, trained to do that. And they were the ones probably who took this oath to avenge Paul and kill him that day. And what's interesting is the the chief priest Ananias and the the council are going along with these terrorists. You know that although they heard Paul speaking to them the truth, they know who Paul was, and they know that he didn't do anything that caused him to avenge or lose his life. But yet they hated Jesus Christ that much. They wanted to shut anyone's mouth who speak the name or utter the word Jesus Christ before them. They couldn't stand it. That was the enmity, that was the enmity these people had against Paul. And the man who is supposed to know the law, God's law, and supposed to teach the law, the chief priest, is the one leading this conspiracy. And now, next day in verse 16, so when Paul's sister's son heard of their ambush, he went and entered into the barracks and told Paul. Then Paul called one of the centurions to him and said, "Take this young man to the commander, for he has something to tell him." So he took him and brought him to the commander and said, "Paul, the prisoner called me to him and asked me to bring this young man to you. He has something to say to you." Then the commander took him by the hand, went inside, and asked privately, "What is it that you wanted to tell me?" And he said, "The Jews have agreed to ask that you bring Paul down to the council tomorrow, as they were going to inquire more fully about him. But do not yield to them, for more than 40 of them lie in wait for him, men who have bound themselves by an oath that they will neither drink nor eat until they have killed him. And now they are ready and waiting for the promise from you." So we don't know much about Paul's family. Obviously, there is a nephew of Paul, a sister's son in Jerusalem. We don't know the sister lived in Jerusalem, or her son heard that Paul is coming to Jerusalem and came to hear him and see him. We don't know. But one thing we know, that he had access to Paul. That indicates that Paul, we know, that was not he was a nobleman. He was a wealthy person. So Paul's family members were also wealthy and connected, and they had the access. They were able to come to the barracks and ask the soldiers to come and talk to Paul. And Paul was in their custody. Paul had the freedom to receive people, and he was treated fairly well at this time. But when this young man came and told Paul that this 40 men who has taken an oath to kill Paul, Paul said that go talk to the commander. And he went and told commander of their scheme. And the commander, heard this, and the commander was able to rescue Paul from their scheme. Again, we see that how God is working behind the scene to protect his servants, those who are proclaiming his word, his gospel to the world. And his hand and his power and strength is with them all the time. So the commander, in verse 22, commander let the young man depart and commanded him, "Tell no one that you have revealed these things to me." And he called for 2 centurions, and saying, "Prepare 200 soldiers, 70 horsemen, and 200 spearsmen to go to Caesarea at the third hour of the night, and provide mounts to set Paul on, and bring him safely to Felix the governor." So now here's the opportunity for Paul to go to Rome. The Lord told him that you will testify before the Romans, just like you did in Jerusalem for me. And now here is how that is being fulfilled. Here, Paul is being escorted by about 470 soldiers. 200 infantrymen, and 70 horsemen, 200 spearsmen. These 40 men, I said that they were probably spearmen. They carry spears with them, and they are trained to kill people. So they were planning to kill Paul that morning. But before that, this commander prepared an army of 400 people, 200 spearmen, and 70 horsemen, and 200 infantrymen, 470 people, protecting Paul to take him from Jerusalem to the governor of to the governor Felix. And this man, this commander, his name is Claudius Lysias, but we read that in verse 26. He wrote a letter to Felix, the governor of Judea. And the letter reads in verse 26, "To the most excellent governor Felix, greetings. This man was seized by the Jews and was about to be killed by them. Coming with the troops, I rescued him, having learned that he was a Roman. And when I wanted to know the reason they accused him, I brought him before their council. I found out that he was accused concerning questions of their law, but had nothing charged against him deserving of death or chains. And when it was told me that the Jews lay in wait for the man, I sent him immediately to you. I also commanded his accusers to state before you the charges against him." So this is the letter that this man Claudius Lysias sent to the governor Felix. And again, there were 470 men accompanying Paul. Paul is carried or is riding in a horse, protected by 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen, that no one can come and attack him, and his life is secured in their hands. So wonderful way of transporting Paul from Jerusalem to the governor. And then the soldiers, as they were commanded, took Paul and brought him to Antipatris. The next day they left the horsemen to go on with them and return to the barracks. So when they came to Caesarea, so that's where the governor was, they came to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor. They also presented Paul to him. And when the governor had read it, he asked what province he was from. And when he understood that he was from Cilicia is the place, actually Tarsus is the city of Cilicia, he said, "I will hear you when your accusers also have come." And he commanded him to kept in Herod's praetorium. So that's the end of chapter 23. So again, we see how wonderfully the Lord is protecting Paul and transporting him safely from the hands of these 40 men who wanted to kill Paul, and safely into the hands of the Roman governor. And there in next chapter we read how he had an opportunity to speak to Felix, and Paul, that was the beginning of Paul's imprisonment in Rome, and he spent about 4 plus years altogether in Rome in confinement. But even though he was in the Roman jail, he had a profitable ministry even through that. People will go through imprisonment. People will suffer if you look at the news stories of people who are suffering today, there are many parts of the world. People are being imprisoned and people are being killed daily. But we know that the Lord is still on the throne, and he is still protecting and fulfilling his will and his purpose through his servants. And we have this promise again from the Lord: be of good cheer, I am standing by you. And may his great name be glorified.